Hi, welcome to another Tech Talk. My name is Gianni Delerta, and we're here at the VirtuWorks studio. To my right, we have the CEO of VirtuWorks, Mr. Omar Monteros, and to my left, our VP of Sales, Mr. Michael Bumberg. Today, we're going to be talking about the differences between MSPs and what to look for when looking for an IT service provider. So, Michael, what's the first thing to consider when negotiating with an IT service provider?
Thanks, Gianni. It's a great question, and it's contracts, specifically long-term contracts. Many service providers will put their customers into long-term contracts, whether that's 12 or 24 months, or sometimes even longer. In our environment, things are constantly changing, so long-term contracts really might not fit most people, or most companies for that matter.
Think about it like anything else. If you're going to buy a car, you're going to buy a computer, you're going to buy it for 3 years, or you're going to buy it for 6 years. The stuff changes so fast that by committing yourself to those terms of that amount of time, you might set yourself up for a problem later on in the future where you're stuck having to pay something at a higher rate or something you don't no longer need for a longer period of time than the technology is actually viable, right? Things like, for instance, an Office 365 account, right? You buy a plan now, and if you have to stick to it for 3 years and you can't change it, over the period of the next 2 years, Microsoft might change part numbers 2 times, right? And offer better SKUs that meet your business, closer, right? So you always want to have, if possible, the flexibility to have, month-to-month contracts or very short-term contracts where it gives your business the flexibility to make change. Some managed service providers in their term contracts, instead of, what they'll do is that they'll create a mix kind of service plan, right? Where they commit to you that they're going to fix your computers and they're going to do everything that they need to do for you, but they'll set some sort of cap on the hours, right? So they'll say, hey, we're going to do everything for you, but only for 10 hours, right? And the real problem with having any hourly cap at all in any type of contract is that you never know how many hours your tech company is going to need in that month in order to accomplish everything you need, right? So it kind of puts you back in a situation that you're kind of like working the old break fix type situation where you have to go talk to the ownership if you're going to have to take more time. Now you're stuck. You can't just fix things. It impacts the ability for the MSP to actually do their job right? And you as the company, you're not really getting the most out of it. So VirtuWorks, chooses to only engage in unlimited hourly contracts where we provide,
Because you're trying to get it right.
Because we want to get it right, and we don't want to have to go into those contentious conversations with the ownership or anything. We want to be able to say, hey, no matter what we're going to have to do, we got you covered, right? Project charges, right? Project charges is another thing that a lot of MSPs leave out of their contract, right? They want you to, they're only going to, commit on the managed services to maintenance, to monitoring, to, very basic key points, like making sure the system keeps running. But they'd consider anything like a software upgrade or upgrading your accounting system or installing a new computer or anything like that. Office move, whatever, anything. It could be very basic to very large as an outside of scope, out of scope item, and they start charging you project charges, right? So you might have thought that you got a really good deal with your MSP, that they're going to charge you a low amount, but at the end of the day, when you start actually working, they start defining, a lot of the stuff as projects, and you end up being the one, with the losing straw, right? So outside of that, the next point, availability, right? Availability depends on, the contract that you sign. It could be an 8x5, a 7x24. It could exclude holidays. You always want to check the rates that your MSP is going to want to charge you for those out of scope hours, right? Because, they might say, we're only going to help you from 8 to 6, and then at 6:30, now it's $150 an hour, right? So you have to be very careful to basically look at what they're actually offering you. Is it a 24/7 contract or is it not? And then, you got to go back and see, hey, well, do I actually need a 24-hour contract or not, right? Do my employees like to call at 11 o'clock at night. If they do, then a contract with shortened availability is not really going to work for you guys, and it's not a good fit, right? You're going to end up getting charged more than what you thought. Another point of a lot of MSPs is that they don't have their own help desk, right? They outsource all of their services to third parties, a lot of times out of the United States. So where you thought you were going to be getting help from local agents and American technicians, you end up calling a 1-800 desk, and then you're being routed to somewhere in India, and it's very frustrating, right? You have language barriers, and they don't know your business. They haven't sat with your business. It's as good as calling 1-800 Microsoft, right, and trying to get help like that. We suggest that most, if you're in a business and you really need this type of service, that you make sure that your MSP is not outsourcing his services to somebody else. They need to do them themselves in order to be effective. Another point, your business in its life, doing business is going to need licenses, all types of licenses from different companies, right? You have Microsoft, Adobe, WatchGuard, or some of the ones that we work with, and basically that billing and management of those licenses is something that we roll into our managed services, right? So as we're doing our job, we're making sure that your employees are properly licensed, that you're not overpaying for licenses that you're not using, and you get one simple bill. Where
what do other MSPs do?
Well, a lot of MSPs out there, what they do is that they end up sending you a separate license invoice.
They chop it up.
You pay it direct to the vendor, and the reality is that if the managed service provider is not responsible for managing that, you might end up paying more licenses than you have employees, or some cases, for instance, you'll see MSPs billing double, right? Where they don't have the ability to do licenses directly with Microsoft, and they don't have something, for instance, that we have called the SCA, which allows us to host Office 365 licenses in our environment. In those cases, these guys have to bill SPLA. If they don't have if your MSP doesn't have the right relationship with the software vendors, you might end up having to pay double for the same thing, right? So be careful and wary of MSPs that don't have the right authorizations with the vendors to provide you the licenses under the right conditions, because you just might end up paying twice for them. Next thing is, are you able, does this managed service provider provide you a way to get self-help when they're not online, when they're not available, right? Do they have some sort of password reset system, or an online portal where an administrator can log in, or users can do simple things like reset their passwords or whatever? It's an important question because most providers don't, right? Most MSPs are still in the in the 1990s, right, where you got to make a phone call or send an email, and everything is basically still done manually by people and humans, right? They don't have an automation in a lot of cases. There's a lot of partners out there that do, but there's a lot of partners out there that don't, right? So not all managed service providers are the same, right? Some of them have a high rate of automation and a high rate of self-management, where as a client, you're not totally dependent on that provider to do every single thing you need. And then you have guys that, it's a one-man shop or a two-man shop, and the only way you're gonna get anything done is if you're able to reach this guy, however, and get him to pay attention to you. Another point is reporting. How is your managed service provider gonna report things to you, like user lists, or how many devices you have, or is everybody compliant with multi-form factor authentication? Reporting is something that's very dynamic, right? And when you have many users, there's a lot of key points that need to be kept track of for that user, right? So
especially because it changes, right?
And it's changing on a daily basis because clients add and remove and delete and resubscribe people from different services and all that. And if the provider doesn't have a clear reporting system,
they may be paying for licenses they're not using. You're
gonna be overpaying. you're gonna end up, maybe with security holes because you have users that you should get rid of that haven't been, that they're still active, or your HR department forgot to delete somebody. So here we've taken a lot of time to create a lot of reports. Sometimes it's maybe too verbose, right? Too much information, but the way we see it, the more information you have, the better for you to make decisions, right? So our reporting
be a question of like,
right.
What if, or is
right.
that there?
So from our point of view as a managed service provider, we are extremely transparent when it comes to reporting, and basically try to feed as much information to the client as possible.
Let's jump into service offerings then.
Yeah, service offerings is important, right? Because you have a managed service provider that's taking care of your IT needs, but what else do they provide, right? You want to have someone that is diverse. So for instance, phones. Phones is a big part of the IT world for companies, VoIP services. VirtuWorks happens to have their own enterprise PBX, so we're able to actually provide that as well. Another one is security. On the other side of cybersecurity, we're talking about real security, whether that be surveillance cameras, access control. Those are some very important pieces to the security environment of a company that still falls under that IT umbrella.
Right, and another important question there is in these service offerings, is this managed service provider actually providing the service that's in the offering, right? Because in a lot of cases, it's just like what we were talking about in the help desk outsourcing, right? It's just unfortunate. A lot of managed service providers these days are just brokers, right? Where they're going out and buying a bunch of different services from a bunch of different people. They have no internal capabilities at all. They just billers. They know how to bill, right? So if you actually call them and try to get some help, they wouldn't know what to do. They're gonna refer you over to the company that they provide the services with, right? So, from a standpoint of service offerings, it's not just important that that they offer the service. It's also important. Question is, okay, you offer the service, but who actually offers the service, right? Is it you? Is it somebody
Are you
else?
white labeling it?
As a white label, I'm gonna have to deal with a third-party company now because I agreed to your service. Because at the end of the day, when you're doing these negotiations with these managed service providers, you really think you're gonna work with the managed service provider, and they'll escape the fact of telling you, oh well, that's actually bringyourownphone.com, right? That's who we use.
And those companies can go out of business.
Could go out of business, could have, and it has no bearing on the company that you picked, right? So be careful, be wary of the broker, the broker manager.
It goes beyond just the actual services being offered, as Omar mentioned, right? It's the control factor, the quality control factor. Are those services provided by the actual company? For instance, VirtuWorks, right? We have our IT department, we have our procurement department, we have our infrastructure department, and that's all ours internal. We do not subcontract that out to anyone, so we can keep a high level of quality.
It lets us maintain our quality to our standards, right? Rather than having to contend with an outside party.
So partnerships, certifications, and like compliance, that's like a really important thing that MSPs need to be cognizant of, or you as someone that's evaluating MSPs need to be cognizant of.
Who are their partners? Who are the people that these MSPs are working with? Because their partnerships speak about the actual managed service provider themselves, right? Some vendors, they're not easy to become a partner for. It's not easy to become a Microsoft CSP tier 1 provider. It's not easy to sell Crestron. It's not easy to, become a WatchGuard provider, right? You have to take trainings and certifications in order to get there, right? There's a lot of MSPs out there that just don't have the resources or the right certifications in place. They buy these products from, unauthorized sources. For instance, to give you an example, nobody usually is Polycom authorized, right? They're buying phones from Amazon or from VoIP phone or wherever, and then they're providing those phones to the end user, right? But if you're not an actual Polycom authorized person and you're selling phones, you're basically violating the warranty, right? So every phone that you're selling to your customers is out of warranty, right? So is that what, as a customer, is that what you're looking for? You want to have a partner in your MSP that has partnerships with the vendors that they're providing to you, so that way when there's a problem, they have a clear pathway off to get help, right?
Yeah, and I'm assuming the aspect of like getting an ISO certification and whatnot, you need that time, that experience,
right,
to really attain that.
That's another point, right? Is compliance points, right? Is your MSP actually taking the time to make sure that they're doing the right job when it comes to your data? Are they securing it properly? Are they being audited by a third party? Like VirtuWorks is ISO 27001 certified, which means we have outside auditors that come in and to basically double check that we're doing a good job at making sure that your data is kept well. So this is again kind of like not all MSPs are made the same, right? You can have an MSP that has 0 certifications, 0 compliance program, no partnerships with any vendor.
And they can still operate.
And they can still operate, and they can still sell you stuff probably at a lower prices than we'd probably be able to, because they just don't have a proper infrastructure in place.
Or at times be at market, right, at the same price, but they don't have any of these
Give you another
things.
example, insurance, right? Do these MSPs have insurance? Are they covered? Do they have errors and omissions? If there's a cyber attack, do they have cyber insurance? It's a stupid question.
Or their staff going to an on-site job, are they insured?
Yeah, they're insured. They have workman's comp. These simple points are simple points, but they're really a huge difference between MSPA and MSPB, right? So when you're shopping, you have to think about all these points, because this is really where you're gonna get the real difference in quality between one and the other, right? Because the partner, the MSP that does do all these things, is gonna be a lot more well-rounded and kind of
cohesive. Everything is integrated.
Integrated and kind of, they're not gonna make as many mistakes as the guy that has none of this stuff, right? And doesn't know what he's doing.
And that concludes our discussion on the differences between MSPs. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.